IT Glue talks about its current and future roadmap. Acronis gets a boatload of cash from Goldman Sachs. TeamViewer, Barracuda, and PAX8 have product updates. Profit Fuel Part 3, and much, much more. It's ChannelPro Weekly, episode 117. Those sticky Dutch babies. Hello, everyone, and welcome to ChannelPro Weekly, episode 117. My name is Matt Whitlock, technology editor, online director, and your host of this fine program for you. And when I mean you, I mean, well, you. But you are the one watching. You are the MSPs, the VARs, the integrators, the IT solution providers, the MSSPs, the MSSS, NCPO, TLPs. I bet that's something if you were to look it up. And you know who might know what that is? The excellent, the fabulous, the currently sitting at home executive editor, Rich Freeman.
Hey there, Matt.
I stopped calling you Captain Serious. But I think we're going to have to bring that one back someday.
Yeah.
But so can you tell people what the MSSN TCPTO is?
We simply don't have enough time on this podcast for me to get into the intricacies and complexities of that acronym.
We'll go with that.
I think he's buying it.
Yep, he's everyone's convinced. Let's just stop there. How the hell are you, Rich?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm doing well. So you're home right now, but I know you actually just got home because you were gone earlier in the week. What were you up to?
I was in Phoenix earlier this week at GlueX, which is the annual partner conference for users of IT Glue.
A little small company like IT Glue, at least it was like a little small company like, I don't know, 4 days ago. And now they have their own conference. It's crazy. How many people were there?
Good question. I think they were expecting something like 500. That sounds about right. It's definitely, this is the second year that they've done it somewhere other than Vancouver, their hometown. So they were in Phoenix last year at the exact same hotel. It was definitely a bigger crowd, more exhibitors this time. So the event has grown.
500. That's a big number.
It's a good number, yeah.
So why Phoenix though? I mean, I'm sure it was warm.
It was quite warm, yeah. I probably in the 90s would be my guess. I mean, they were joking about that a little bit. So, like I said, this is their third partner conference, the second in Phoenix. The very first conference they did was in Vancouver, British Columbia. And apparently they got some complaints from partners about it being, cold and wet. Like I'm home in Seattle, which is not far from Vancouver, and it is cool and wet here. So people didn't like that, and they said, fine, well, we'll go to Arizona. It will be sunny and really hot.
But there's got to be a middle ground between those, right? Like, maybe somewhere in Utah.
Yeah, I don't know. The golf's probably better in Arizona.
The golf is probably better. I don't know. Nice picturesque views. You could just go dig a hole somewhere like on a mountain in Utah and
have at it.
Put a flag in there. I think that'd be decent golf anyway. Very cool. So I know we're going to talk a lot about the IT Glue conference. Anything else going on with Mr. Freeman?
No, not really. Like you said, I've been out of town all week, so just settling back in. I'm here for 2 weeks now, Wednesday to Wednesday. So
that's nice. That's rare that you get to be home that much when it's not like the middle of the winter.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a conference like every day. So just nothing interesting or.
Well, just trying to be a little bit more selective these days. And aside from which, Joel, our colleague Joel Zabespinner, he's at all of those shows. So ChannelPro has somebody there. It just doesn't necessarily have to be me.
Aw, but it's fun sending you around.
I do like going around, too.
I know you do. Mr. Travel, Mr. High ranking with, who do you fly? You don't fly Delta, right? You fly like...
I do fly Delta, yeah.
Mostly Delta?
It's a mix of Delta and Alaska. If you live in Seattle, Alaska is sort of hard to resist because this is like their hub and you can fly nonstop almost anywhere. And so I do wind up splitting miles, which is not ideal.
No, not ideal. From where I'm at, it's like it's Chicago. So you can get a direct flight to anywhere in Chicago. Mm-hmm. But it's usually like United. I usually do United or American. Actually, not really United much anymore. Mostly American if I can. A lot of Delta out of Chicago too, just because it's a big airport. But yeah, you don't want to split the miles. You don't get all the perks.
Yeah.
But you just hit like nobody wants to really talk too much about this, but you just hit like a rank with Delta, right?
That's right. I could not be more proud. I am now platinum with Delta.
And what does that get you?
Well, the main thing that it gets me that I wasn't getting before, and I still need to kind of research this. I don't really understand a lot about it, but if you make it to platinum status, they give you a gift every year. There's this like menu of gifts you can pick from, and it's like whatever 25,000 bonus miles or a companion certificate. Or there's like 5 options in there, and I know that there's one that I think it's like 4 free upgrades. And I don't know how this works. I'll have to like look it up on the pointsguy.com or something like that. But I get the ability, I think, assuming seats are available, to like step up to first class on some long domestic flight 4 times. I don't know. That's the one I'm probably going to pick. But obviously,
but you get bumped up a lot anyway, though, right?
Well, it's happening more often. Yep. And in fact, the funny thing is, so on Delta, you've got coach, you've got first class, and then in between there's this sort of middle ground called Comfort Plus. And
which is really what coach used to be 10 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, coach where legs might actually fit. And they're not charging you for, cocktails and but I got this email announcing that this return trip from San Jose and our event had put me over the top. Hey, you've got platinum status, and almost immediately I start getting these emails, automated emails from Delta announcing that they were stepping me up to Comfort Plus on a bunch of flights. It's like I didn't ask for it. So I'm seeing how the other half lives now in platinum territory.
Well, welcome to an area of life that I will never see. Unless I really start traveling a lot again. But as you know, I try to avoid travel as much as possible. Not because I don't like traveling, but because I don't like leaving my kids here alone. It's hard on my wife. So my kids are very involved in things.
And it's kind of an ordeal. I mean, it's like an hour to get to O'Hare from there, and then you got to park. And it's not,
there's like a park, like an outlet you got to park. That's not too bad. It's just, I just don't like leaving the kids. That's pretty much what it is. And plus, I got a million other things to do anyway. But we'll do it if we have to. So anyway, well, thank you for the insight into the elite life of a Delta flyer. I'm sure everyone else is now very interested in wanting to learn about these various statuses. But why don't we learn about some of the things you saw and heard about at the IT Glue conference, like a whole bunch of stuff. It looks like they got password management, mobile app coming, and some other stuff. So why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, they did a sort of product roadmap presentation on Tuesday. And I would say that there was nothing in there that I would call a blockbuster enhancement or upgrade, but there were lots of little upgrades, and most of which were clearly pretty popular with the audience. IT Glue is one of those systems that people are spending a lot of time in. And if you can do a little something that removes an irritation, saves a little time, it actually has more of an impact on people than you might think. So some of these things don't sound enormous, but just as a for example, they're adding the ability to segment passwords into folders. So you could track all your passwords through the system before, but it was all one big list. Now you can sort it out into different folders by functional type or department or something like that. Coming soon, it's not quite ready yet, but at some point very soon they're going to add the ability to apply differentiated security policies to those different folders. So you might be able to or might want to be a little bit more strict about this group of passwords and a little less strict about that one. That was something that people were really interested in. IT Glue has an integration pact in place with a company called QuickPass. QuickPass is a system that end users can use to reset a password on their own. And so there's been some integration with QuickPass since the summer, I believe. But if an end user did go in and reset a password, an administrator on the IT Glue side had to go in and sort of manually record that separately in the system. There's further integration coming now that's going to automate that. So a change happens in one place, it gets pushed out automatically into the IT Glue system. They've got a similar thing coming up where you're not going to have to make certain kinds of changes separately in IT Glue and in Active Directory. You'll do it once in IT Glue, and IT Glue will push it out to Active Directory for you.
That's handy.
Yeah, that is handy.
Yep.
They have something coming to their mobile app that got a pretty strong response from the audience. Right now, if you're on site with a customer, you're trying to look up some configuration data about a firewall, say, or a switch, you have to go into the IT Glue and kind of manually search for that device to look up the information. They are adding the ability to do a barcode scan, so you can put a barcode on the device, scan the barcode, and boom, the configuration pops up. And then last but not least, this probably got the most enthusiastic response of anything that they announced.
Snacks.
They're adding dark mode.
Not snacks.
Now, I am not I'm not a coder. I'm not a technical guy, so it's a little hard for me to relate. But this is not the first time this year that a vendor I cover has added dark mode to their interface, and it is hugely popular with people who live in these systems.
Well, yeah, you don't want the white blaring at your eyes all day long. It's not particularly good for you. So I can see how the dark mode. See, when you said it got a big response, I thought they were going to announce snacks for everybody. So for some people, I don't think you heard me when I said it, but I probably overtalked you. But they added dark mode to their interface. They should have announced snacks.
Snacks?
Snacks. Yeah, old chips and everybody likes snacks.
That would have been right. Chocolate chip cookies. That would have been the most enthusiastically received.
Cookies are always a winner too.
Yeah.
Particularly the peanut. Well, I like the peanut butter variety.
Oh, I'm right there with you.
But but no, dark mode. If it was going to be something other than dark mode, snacks would have been it. But no, that is a good one because we all need to protect our peepers, these little guys, as we stare at screens all day long. So sometimes having less light is better.
And I mean, a lot of techs put in hours at night. I mean, that it's definitely easier to deal with in those after-hour situations. So that's another reason I think people appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome, very cool. So it sounds like a lot of small things that people who use IT Glue will really like. But they're also showing a lot of new integration and automation kind of stuff in their roadmap, and I know there's a whole piece on that. So tell us a little bit about what more integrating and plugging in they're doing, and with who.
Yeah, so that's a more long-term kind of thing. So they spent most of the time in this product roadmap keynote talking about stuff that is either available immediately or coming within the next couple of months or so. But they also kind of gave you some hints of where they're going from a longer term perspective. And I was able to, I got some interview time with Nadir Merchant, who is the general manager in charge of IT Glue, in essence, the CEO of the company today. So I got a chance to talk with him about some of this as well. So from a longer term perspective, there are, I guess, two things that are most significant from my standpoint. So first of all, as we know, last December, IT Glue officially became part of Kaseya. And I say officially because there was this long-term sort of hidden from view process where they kind of gradually became part of Kaseya. But that transaction closed December of last year. So IT Glue is one of the many companies like Rapid Fire Tools and Spanning and Unitrends that are sort of part of the Kaseya family. And so one of the things that they are going to be looking to do is deepen their integration with those other Kaseya systems. Now, I mean, integration is core to what IT Glue is about. They've got 23 different integrations in place now. The ability to import data from lots of different systems is really kind of core to what IT Glue does. But obviously, it's different. It's one thing for IT Glue to go out to ConnectWise, say, and propose an integration with them and work on that with them. And, you're waiting to see how enthusiastic ConnectWise is about it, how much resource they can apply to it. When you're talking about an integration with another Kaseya product, that's all sort of, inside the house. You're, in essence, in control of both sides of the relationship. So it's just easier to get things done faster. And because the same parent company, Kaseya, owns all the code, you can really kind of do code level integration as opposed to API level integration, which Kaseya sometimes calls cosmetic integration. They're looking for what they call workflow integration, where you're really, it's happening at the source code level, and it's so deep that there's no seam between these different systems. So just as kind of an example, very recently, there was an integration announced with between IT Glue and Network Detective. So Network Detective is this network assessment product from Rapid Fire Tools. And now there are all sorts of, Network Detective integrates with other platforms, but IT Glue users can import data in all sorts of new kind of deeper ways with Network Detective, versus what's available with some of those other integrations with third-party platforms out there. So there's going to be more of that coming. There's an integration coming relatively soon, apparently, with the products from ID Agent. ID Agent is another company that Kaseya bought quite recently. So that, just as a for example, if the dark web monitoring tool from ID Agent sees that one of your customers has a compromised credential that's popped up out in the dark web, it can automatically, ID Agent will sort of automatically export that into your IT Glue system, and IT Glue can kind of flag it to call it to your attention. You don't have to go into the ID Agent system separately to find that information. It will find you via IT Glue. So there's a lot more of that kind of thing coming. And then from an even longer term perspective, I think, and we're talking about something that will unfold over years here. They're really looking, right now when you think about IT Glue, you think documentation. And when you think documentation, you're thinking about consolidating information from all of your customers in one place, like pooling data in one place. But where IT Glue wants to go next, essentially, is once you've pooled all this data, what can you do to start acting on it in an automated way? That's where the automation angle comes in. So if you see, as a for example, that privileged access rights have been assigned to somebody who has an IP address in China and so on, is there something, can you build automation into the system that automatically shuts that down and sends an alert out to a technician to confirm that actually this should have happened, as opposed to just maybe flagging it and waiting for somebody to kind of step in manually? That they're looking for ways that they can actually take the data they're collecting and use it to drive automated management and thereby make MSPs more efficient.
Which is always good. The more efficient you get, the more profitable you are.
No question. Yeah.
Right. Did you see anything on the long-term roadmap that it extends that mobile app feature that you were talking about, where you can like make a barcode and put it on a device and scan it and get all the credentials? Are they going to extend that to the employees, so that way you can stick a barcode on the employee, and then if you can scan them, and then you'll know if they like have a bad credential or something?
There's a thought. Yeah, get the configuration for Rich Freeman, and yeah.
That would actually be very useful. I would like to be able to scan and be like, okay, I can get a whole bio, and then I can get like the last 25 emails you sent, and all your contacts that are in foreign countries.
And I'm sure this feature would be hugely popular with employees too. We're just going to put this on your forehead. Don't worry about it. It's going to make everybody more efficient.
It doesn't have to be on their that would be the most easiest place to scan, though. But I mean, it could be on a badge or like embroidered on a shirt,
right?
You know, like a QR code. Yeah, this is getting kind of like into strange territory for that discussion. Okay. So on this integration and automation thing, the integration is no surprise, right? As Kaseya has been buying all these companies up, it is not a shocker that they would start trying to plug them together in ways that make the value of one better with another Kaseya product.
Not at all. Yep.
Right. So nobody's like, I so didn't see that coming. The automation part is interesting, though, because interesting, I also wouldn't say shocking, but interesting, and has a lot more potential to really improve the value of these things together if it can not only kind of like plug in, but if it's taking common action and doing things for you as a result of plugging them together. That's actually a little bit beyond just integration. right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's still, they're just barely kind of getting started on that. So it's a little hard to understand exactly what the world will look like to an IT Glue user once that vision has been fully realized. But it's interesting. And one of the things that makes me wonder about, and over time I'll kind of learn more about this, is how do the distinctions? There are obviously a ton of things that you can't do. You'll never be able to do inside IT Glue that you can do inside an RMM system. But if your documentation system is actually doing some automated management for you, do the lines between documentation and RMM get blurrier? I mean, I'm sure the folks at IT Glue would say, well, that's already starting to be the case in terms of Kaseya's RMM. But even just more broadly, I mean, does that whole product category start to get more into remote management as people build or these companies build automation into it? And it's worth noting very quickly, I haven't had a chance to write about it yet, but I had an interview with one of the co-founders of LionGuard, and they do documentation as well. And they are headed very much in the exact same direction. The vision is that down the road, they're not just going to help you collect information, they're going to act on it for you in ways that kind of save you time, essentially.
So these integration and automation points, is Kaseya making these exclusive within Kaseya-owned products, or are they going to expose APIs and integration points that other companies, like, say, LionGuard, for example, can plug into and work with Kaseya in a similar way?
So yeah, I mean, they've got Kaseya has APIs for all of its products today. Anyone is welcome to. So I don't think, and this gets a little bit tricky because again, it comes back to this bit about having access to the source code. You can probably integrate more deeply within the Kaseya family than you can between a Kaseya product and a third-party product. But theoretically, speaking, very broadly speaking, there's nothing that these Kaseya properties will do that a third-party company couldn't do with those products as well. They're just going to have to, A, do it through the API, and B, dedicate the resources to make that integration happen themselves.
Okay. I could certainly see more people still wanting to use Kaseya as their RMM, but use LionGuard or use what's another? There's a couple dark web companies, like one of those, as opposed to ID Agent, So it'll be interesting to see as they build these deeper integrations and automations. Automation is more the interesting part. If they're going to expose those or ways for third parties to hook into those without the source code level, you know what I mean?
Right. No, that is a good question. My suspicion is yes, they'll make it possible, but it'll be easier for them to do it inside of Kaseya.
So yeah, okay, we'll see. We'll see if they do that. I don't think they have to. I think that if you buy all these companies, you don't necessarily have to play nice with everybody. You have a solution for that. It's nice if they do, but don't you think it's in their best interest if they don't?
Well, you could certainly make the argument that it is, but I think what they would say, and in fact, on multiple occasions, Fred Vacola, the CEO of Kaseya, has said, if we ever shut down the APIs and stop making the platform open so that others can integrate it, it's what was the term used? It would be suicide, essentially, for Kaseya. The issue is, there are lots and lots of MSPs, and we have an article about this in the latest issue of ChannelPro. Lots of MSPs assemble these kind of best-of-breed tool sets. It's like, I like the Kaseya RMM, but I like the ConnectWise PSA and somebody else's security tool. That's what works for me, and I've got it all kind of integrated and woven into my business process. So the incentive for Kaseya and all these other platform owners to play nice is, if you don't, then you potentially lose a whole ton of business from people who, aren't ready to go all in on one vendor.
Makes sense. Suicide is a strong term, so it sounds like openness is something that they believe thoroughly in, at least for the time being. So that's pretty cool. So now, Rich, I was going to try to find a transition into this next story.
Uh-huh.
So, okay, we cover a lot of things at ChannelPro.
Yeah.
If I gave you $147, would you write a news article about it?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Probably not.
But apparently, Goldman Sachs just gave Acronis
Oh dear.
$147. And
Yeah.
now, what were they going to use that $147 for, Rich? Were they going to buy, like, a low-grade scanner, a nice mechanical
morale
keyboard,
event for a couple of people? Yeah, send some people out to lunch or something.
a new coffee maker? They needed a new coffee maker at Acronis, so maybe they bought one of those Krups machines, or the Keurig, with the little pods.
Yeah, hit refresh, wise guy. We had a little headline issue there, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, wait. So, okay. So it actually, they collected a lot of coffee maker money.
Yeah.
Not just $147, $147 million.
Yes.
And they couldn't spare $147 for me. This makes me.
Well, now they can.
Now they can't, but I ain't got no check. No, sorry. I just thought that was funny, and I figured you'd want to fix that. So look at that, folks. ChannelProNetwork.com in real time, getting better as a result of ChannelPro Weekly. You saw it here live. So Rich, so Goldman gave Acronis a lot of money. I think most people who read the headline kind of assumed it was not just $147.
I sure hope so.
But if they read the article, it certainly got into the although the first line of your article might need a little bit of clarification too.
Yeah.
But no, that's a lot of money. So what is Goldman up to, giving Acronis a lot of money?
Well, I mean, really, it's the same thing that all of these private equity investors. So, I mean, it's like this giant story that's been going on for a long time. The flood of private equity money into the managed services space, private equity investors purchasing or investing in companies like Datto and ConnectWise and Kaseya and so on. So really, this is just another example of that. What's significant about it is that it involves Goldman Sachs. So the first little hint that maybe we were kind of getting to a different level in this trend of investors getting really serious about managed services came just a little bit earlier this year when Kaseya announced that they had raised $500 million, which I probably rendered in my article as $500. I need to go back and check. But it was actually $500 million. And what was significant about that is some of the money came from Insight Venture Partners, which already owned Kaseya. But some of the money came from another Wall Street firm called TPG. And without going into great detail about TPG, that's just a different species on Wall Street. It's a bigger investment company. They've got stakes in Spotify and Airbnb and Uber and so on. And so it was kind of an interesting hint that managed services are getting on the radar of even bigger and more powerful players on Wall Street. And so when you see Goldman Sachs, pretty well-known presence on Wall Street, putting $147 million into Acronis, and by the way, in the process, turning Acronis into a unicorn, a company valued north of $1 billion. It's interesting. It's a sign, basically, of further acceleration and advancement in this explosion of the managed services market right now.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about this particular trend on the show before, and we've thrown ideas around on why private equity is so interested in these managed services kind of companies like Acronis and the Kaseyas, and one of the things that because a lot of what private equity does is they buy companies or they invest in companies, they build their value up, and then they they sell them off. But we haven't seen a lot of sell-off in these private equity companies. So I know we've thrown ideas around too that they're using these companies like Acronis, who generate massive amounts of recurring income, and they're using them as a piggy bank to fund other investments. And they may not get rid of them at any particular time. What are we seeing? We've kind of thrown those ideas around and a few others. Where do you think this falls? So you think we're getting closer to saying A is more true than B, or what do you think?
I mean, specifically in terms of this Goldman deal, or just bigger picture?
I would say, well, let's talk about both. The Goldman deal in particular, why they're interested in Acronis in particular, but just what we've seen in the industry so far.
So in terms of why Goldman would be interested in Acronis, they are...
Money. All right, so, okay. They're interested
what?
Money. They're interested in money.
Yeah. So Acronis is already a big name in backup, and they're right on the verge. They're weeks away from sort of officially plunging into the security market, although they've already taken serious steps in that direction. So, a company with a lot of managed services partners, a growing security business, big backup business, lots of recurring revenue there, lots of long-term opportunity. So yeah, money from a Goldman Sachs perspective. This is a company that's running well now and that is well positioned for the future. And here is our opportunity. We're looking around. We're seeing TPG get into this market. We're seeing smaller private equity investors get in. What's our play? How do we get in? This was at least the first move that they've made.
Right. Well, private equity can be a good and a bad thing, though. So you said Acronis has already ran well; it's doing well. Private equity can screw that up if they get their fingers in there too much.
But absolutely.
But I'm also curious: does Goldman see normally private equity? You don't normally see them doing a lot of investment traditionally, unless they see a potential for massive amounts of growth, right? So are they eyeing that Acronis' move into security as something like, this is going to take Acronis from $1 billion value to $2 billion value?
I mean, I won't put specific numbers on it, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, I keep saying it's Goldman Sachs that's doing this investment, but it's specifically an arm of Goldman Sachs called Goldman Sachs Growth Equity that goes out and looks for technology companies with high growth potential. So yes, they absolutely view Acronis as ready to kind of break out.
So they do that. Then what? Then do they cash out? Because that's the part that I'm missing in terms of just the industry as a whole. And maybe we just don't report on it, or we don't see it in the headlines. But all these private equity companies are throwing money at managed services companies like security and RMM and all this stuff. But no one's cashing out.
Yeah, well, not no one. I mean, the first example that kind of comes to mind is Thoma Bravo selling SolarWinds. Now, they still own a good-sized chunk of SolarWinds, so you can kind of question, did they get out all the way or not? But I mean, SolarWinds is now a publicly listed company. They had been 100% owned by Thoma Bravo.
Right, and how much of the stock does Thoma Bravo now own?
I don't know the percentage. It might be in a filing somewhere off the top of my head. I don't know the percentage, but
right. And if it's significant, you could just argue that they wanted the market forces to drive valuation, so they can actually start, like I said, actually pulling money and dividends and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. Again, I don't know how big it is. It's substantial, that's for sure. At the opposite end, though, so I mean, it's a little bit all over the map. So, Insight Partners already owned Kaseya. They participated in that $500 million round a few months ago. So rather than get out, and from a timing perspective, it was kind of time to, in terms of the standard timelines for private equity investments, they were ripe to get out. Instead of doing that, they kind of doubled down. So there certainly are private equity investors who are not kind of looking to, come in, make some changes, and flip it. It varies. The thing is, we keep talking about private equity investors as if it's all one big bucket, and there are different kinds of private equity firms, and there are definitely firms that really do look to get in and get out quickly, and there are others that have more of a longer term kind of perspective on the investments that they make. So you wouldn't expect necessarily there to be one answer to the question: are they getting in, getting out? Are they staying in? Are they looking to generate cash that they can use elsewhere from the investment, et cetera? It varies.
Yeah, I'm sure there is some variance there and what their intentions are. But but what I was just saying that so far from what I've seen of private equity investment into the kinds of services and vendors and that service the IT channel, I'm just not seeing a lot of people getting out, which is kind of interesting. But it's also still early too, right? If these are real long-term investments, there may be more strategy behind it.
That's what I was going to say is, even companies, even investors that come in and get out relatively quickly in private equity land is like 3 years, and Datto got acquired late in 2017. ConnectWise got bought earlier this year. So, from a timing perspective, and Kaseya was acquired in 2013. So they've actually been in private hands for a long time, and their investors have, like I said, doubled down, gotten in deeper. But a lot of the bigger private equity moves that we've seen have really happened within the last couple of years or so. So it's early. It's kind of hard to know what approach these private equity firms will ultimately take.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to watch. And with these kinds of things come up on the show a lot, where we end up talking about a lot of the investments and stuff. So it's not a topic that we're never going to return to.
No.
So we'll definitely be able to kind of follow this and see how it goes and where it goes and what happens to some of these companies once private equity pulls out, if they do pull out, because that kind of throws them on their own and lets them sink or swim, I guess, right?
Yeah, well, and it makes them basically answerable to investors as well, and quarterly reporting cycles, and the things that can come with that. So yeah, no, it's very much a question mark for the future.
It is, and Acronis, I don't know what they're going to do with their $147 million private investment, but hopefully they put it to good use. I could use some private equity investment. I notice my chair is kind of squeaky. Maybe I can get $147 private equity investment to get me a new chair.
Yeah.
What do you think? Or I could get a $147 investment to get me some new smart glasses so I could use it with TeamViewer. So what's TeamViewer doing, Rich? They got smart glasses functionality. What's that all about?
So TeamViewer has has had for a while, a product called Pilot, and it's essentially a remote support tool for field technicians. Somebody goes out to a customer site and they need some information or some assistance from folks back at the head office. They can call out or pull out Pilot and get augmented reality assistance with whatever repair that they're performing. And so, full-blown augmented reality with the arrows and text and anything that somebody could project into an image to help a field technician figure out exactly where it is they need to be plugging in the cables and putting in a hard drive, whatever. What TeamViewer has added with the 2.0 release of Pilot is the ability to do all that with smart glasses. So before, the augmented reality instructions came to you on your smartphone display. Now, if you have a headset or smart glasses from Epson, RealWear, and Vuzix, you can actually just put that on and keep your hands free and have all the instructions from your colleague back at headquarters just sort of projected right out in front of you.
Well, that's neat. I'm curious why those and not some of the larger AR headsets that are already out there. Like, I don't see, like, help me out here, Rich. My God, the Microsoft one.
HoloLens.
HoloLens. Thank you. My gosh, I need more coffee, I think. Yeah, but I don't see HoloLens support. Maybe it does, but it's just not saying it. But it's weird that they wouldn't point that one out.
Well, no. So right now, those three brands are the only ones that are supported. I will just tell you that there are more coming. I cannot tell you what's coming, but there are more coming.
Yeah, I've never even heard of RealWear.
Yeah, I honestly I hadn't either. But in terms of the criteria they used to decide where they were going to begin, they went out and they were looking essentially for two things. And one is, market presence. I mean, how well known among people who know this kind of thing are these companies? And the other was, how serious are they about commercial applications? Because there are plenty of other products that we could point to that are much more well-known and widely used in consumer kinds of settings, but they didn't really want to be partnering, at least out of the gate, with hardware makers who are focused mostly on gaming, but also do some business stuff. They were looking for products that are really kind of meant for a business environment.
But that's VR. That's VR, not necessarily AR. I don't know of any consumer companies that are really focusing on augmented reality. Not in any significant way. VR for sure, but that's a lot of gaming stuff. But you see, the thing with AR, I have not really received, and I think AR technology is still very much in its infancy, and it's one of these things. It was like Microsoft went kind of gangbusters at the beginning, showing off HoloLens, and it was something that no one had ever seen before. But since that, it really hasn't gotten dramatically better. It's gotten a little better, but not enough that I think where people want to strap these things to their heads, because I don't think they just provide enough usage yet. But I'm looking down here at the very bottom of this, and they're saying they're going to sell 8.9 million AR units this year. Is that really true? 8.9 million AR units?
Well, AR and VR.
AR and VR. Okay, that was what I was going to ask, if that included VR. So I'm very interested in what the commercial percentage of that 8.9 million is, and what really that is comprised of. Because like Google Cardboard is like technically a VR device, if you will, right? But you slap your phone into. So does that count as a VR kind of thing? I don't know. Like what is that number made up of?
Yeah, and it's an IDC number that we're quoting here. That in 2019, IDC expects global shipments to go up 54.1%. Shipments of AR and VR, 54.1% to 8.9 million. Yeah, you'd have to kind of look at the definition, how they define augmented reality and virtual reality devices to know if Google Cardboard counts or not. In terms of the earlier question, though, I mean, the percentage of those devices being used commercially, I would expect is very low at this point. It's definitely happening. I mean, I hear about it most often in the context of manufacturing and sometimes in healthcare, but to a much less extent. One of the things that I spoke to the folks at TeamViewer about was just, how many MSPs are doing anything with AR now? And they freely admit very, very few. That the penetration in the managed services space right now is very light. And so one of the big, challenges that they face basically is to kind of evangelize and ultimately popularize this model. Hey, MSPs, here's a much easier way to handle some of these use cases where you've got somebody out at an office. There's a problem with a WatchGuard firewall, and the guy on your team who knows everything about WatchGuard is somewhere else. Instead of a second truck roll, you can use. Right now, very few MSPs are even aware of that opportunity, and sort of getting them aware of it and getting them to do it and invest in it, I think is it's going to take a while. It's an uphill kind of climb.
It is, and I think the better AR devices get at transfixing things in reality, the faster it can do it, and the better it can do it. And I think that's where I've always kind of fallen a little unimpressed by a lot of the demos that I've received, even from some of the bigger companies, where it's like, oh yeah, you could be staring here at this motherboard, and it can put a square around where the RAM is, and it can put a square around where the processor goes. And it's like, okay, that's great, but is there anybody fixing computers that doesn't know where the RAM goes? Like, seriously? But there's other, but even if you do needed to do that, it couldn't do that well. Right? Like if you moved your head like this as opposed to this, or like this, it wouldn't work. right? And it would go on and off and be flashy. It's like that has to improve before I think you're going to see a lot of people really jump into this. But it's cool that we're seeing you have the chicken. You have to have the chicken or the egg first, right? So if companies like TeamViewer are starting to support it now and starting to write in code and features that utilize AR, as the AR hardware improves, there might be more MSPs that want to jump into this and find more interesting use cases for it.
It's worth mentioning too, because that something you pointed out there actually came up in the interview with them. They very much wanted me to know that if you're wearing smart glasses and using TeamViewer Pilot and you move your head around like that, the arrow that's pointing at the RAM will continue to point at the RAM. So whatever the software has at least that bit of intelligence in it. I didn't get a demo. I don't know how well that really works. But they did actually call that out as something that they can do.
So, but that goes and that's the obvious feature. And I you know me, Rich. I'm a cynical person, but I'm optimistic. I'm a cynical optimist. Does that make sense?
I guess.
But like, that's cool that they can make the arrow point at the RAM. If there is a technician servicing a machine in the field, they don't need an arrow to point at the RAM, right? Because if they don't know where the RAM is, why are they servicing a computer, right? You'd think that would be like I don't want a doctor wearing an AR headset that points at my stomach if I'm undergoing like gastrointestinal surgery, because he doesn't know where my stomach is, right?
Yeah, but I suspect we could come up with more plausible kind of use cases where somebody who understands networking is dealing with an unfamiliar piece of networking hardware and needs some help kind of figuring out, which is the switch that I need to be focused on. I've not seen this device before. I don't quite know how to. And that's where is the RAM is probably not
right. But that's all but that's the kind of level that I've seen in like every demo I've gotten. Is like, look, we can put a box around the processor. And it's like, great, I know where the processor is without this green box that disappears and reappears every 5 seconds. Like, I got that. Where I think this goes is with better connections with things like IT Glue, what we were talking about, where I can stare at, follow this. I can stare at a device and it has and you said it has a barcode on it. So like my smart glasses can see the barcode. It goes to IT Glue. It pulls up the configuration of this and then comes back and highlights where all of the specific cables for that company is documented and where they're supposed to be plugged in if I'm like replacing a switch, right? So I stare at the device, and port A, B, C, and D light up and instructions on there say this cable goes into A. Like, that would be kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
But like, we're 5-10 years away from that, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no way of assessing how long it'll take to get there. In the world of technology, 5 to 10 years is a long time. So somehow or another, it just instinctively, just guesswork. It feels like maybe sooner than that. But yeah,
but AR is still, because the hardware isn't there, and like we're just now seeing like some companies getting on board with this. As far as like this particular use case, I know there are other companies focused on like medical AR kind of stuff, but that's also still severely hindered by the hardware that people would have to wear to do this kind of stuff. But I'm just looking at the progression of AR hardware over the last 5 years, and it was like big innovation, and then it's just been like a crawl. So I think 5 to 10. I think 10 years is a realistic assessment.
Well, it really very well could be. I mean, it gets back to the chicken and egg thing, because the scenario you just kind of played out is one that I think a lot of MSPs would find compelling, but it's going to be the availability of that kind of functionality that's going to pull them into AR, and the AR people aren't going to be knocking themselves out enabling that kind of functionality if there's a relatively small market for it. So that'll certainly drag things out a little bit. I suppose if there was enough confidence in a market being there, you would see more investment put into the hardware and the hardware advancing faster.
I'm with you. We definitely, and it makes me think, we definitely don't necessarily need more chickens, but we need more eggs because eggs are delicious.
Chicken's pretty delicious too.
Chickens are pretty delicious. I'm in the mood for breakfast right now, though, so I think eggs are sounding better. Rich, what's your favorite way to have eggs? So you're all right. So picture this, because I mean everybody likes eggs in different ways. Sometimes you're sitting down at like a good old fashioned diner, right? You're hankering for breakfast. You're just gonna get some eggs, some hash browns, some toast, and some coffee, right? And maybe some bacon. You like bacon? You do like bacon, right?
I do like bacon.
Yes, I remember. Yes, you like bacon. Bacon is good. So the waitress comes over and she says, "Hey, hon, how you like your eggs?" Rich Freeman says,
usually I will say scrambled, but
scrambled, man.
So I like fried eggs, but the reason I like fried eggs is soaking up the yolk with bread. So it depends a little bit. If I feel like, I'm not just going to get a soggy, uninteresting piece of toast. Like if there is some quality bread around, then I might go the fried route just because I know I'm going to enjoy kind of sopping up egg yolk.
So do you like ask the waitress what brand of bread they use?
No.
How do you determine that while you're ordering?
Well, it depends on where I'm ordering. So if I'm just in a diner and someone, give me the scrambled eggs. But
so if it's an unknown locale where you do not know the bread selections, you go scrambled, which scrambled is good. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. All right. Now, what's your favorite specialty egg dish?
Specialty egg dish. Does Dutch babies count?
I've never heard of these. What are those?
I don't even know how to describe it exactly. It's like a baked egg kind of dish with sprinkled sugar on top and really, really good. And I honestly would never have heard of them either, except I have a friend who makes them. I haven't had her Dutch babies in too long.
You can't say that on this show, Rich. This is a family show.
Yeah.
No, I got to try. If I ever see that on a menu, I'm going to try it. That sounds very interesting. Very interesting. I like breakfast discussion. This is fun. Folks, if you listen to ChannelPro Weekly and you have a favorite egg dish that we may not have ever heard of or a particular way to make this, email us, podcast@channelpronetwork.com. We would love to devote 5 minutes to just hearing how everybody likes to have their eggs. Because I know Rich would really, really like that.
I need more options. Scrambled and fried are good. Every now and again, I'll luck into Dutch babies. What am I missing out on?
I do like a good plate of Eggs Benedict. I'm a big hollandaise fan. Yeah, those are good. We need to update our eggs, Rich, our egg selections. Just like how Barracuda is updating their managed workplace RMM. They're not adding eggs, though, I don't think.
No.
Or hollandaise sauce. Because if you add hollandaise to an RMM, it just gets sticky. Right.
Yeah. Well, and, in some contexts, stickiness is good. I don't know. I mean, maybe they should be, free hollandaise sauce with every order of managed workplace, and it becomes a sticky solution and maybe a good way. I don't know. But so, yeah, what we're talking about here, though, is the managed workplace RMM solution from Barracuda Networks. I am going to guess that there are some really intelligent, successful, thriving MSPs listening to the podcast right now who did not know that Barracuda owns an RMM system, because this has not been giant news in the industry. It broke this story in February that Barracuda had purchased managed workplace from Avast. And managed workplace, by the way, has been around about as long as managed services has been around. It was created originally by a pioneer in RMM software called Level Platforms. Level Platforms got bought by AVG in 2013. AVG got bought by Avast in 2016. And now managed workplace has been sold to Barracuda. And we really have
changed hands. It's changed hands a lot. That company has changed hands a lot. Like, I think I have versions of that logo in my library from
the managed workplace one.
Yeah, from like the level 1 days to it was level 1 by AVG, and it was a whole bunch of things. It almost as much as like the SolarWinds, formerly known as GFI, formerly known, remember all those?
Logic Now, Hound Dog, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, continue.
So Barracuda becomes the latest company in the RMM space in February. Behind the scenes, they've been doing stuff. So they've platformed the solution in the cloud. You can still run it on-prem, but if you want to run it in the cloud, they've got multiple data center options for that. They enhanced their API connections between that system and Microsoft, which makes managing Office 365 through the solution a lot easier. But they haven't really been talking a whole ton about Managed Workplace until this week, when they issued release or version 12, basically, of Managed Workplace. And this is really sort of the first time that they went out and kind of tried to make a big splash about this. Now, in terms of the functionality in the release that is perhaps most significant, the biggest thing is they've added third-party patching functionality. So you now have the ability to patch a whole array of third-party systems through that consolidated interface, which can be a really convenient thing for MSPs. There are other RMM tools, by the way, that do this, but it's new to Managed Workplace. And then they also added some new integration between Managed Workplace and Acronis Backup. And Acronis Backup is another Barracuda product. And I mean, essentially what's interesting and maybe most significant about this is it gives us a first really good, clear look at where Barracuda is planning to take Managed Workplace going forward in the future. There was some question when the acquisition happened about, are they planning to build another one of these managed services platforms? Do they go from RMM into PSA and quoting and all these other kinds of things? Or are they going to turn Managed Workplace into an RMM system specifically for security? And really that latter direction is the one that they're saying that they're interested in. They don't really have much interest in getting into any of the operational aspects of what an MSP does. They might, IT Glue, for example, as we were saying, has password management functionality. The Barracuda folks could see adding password management to Managed Workplace at some point down the road, but that's about as close as they come to anything like PSA or documentation or something like that. What they want to have is the industry's best RMM solution for securing your end users, because it is woven very tightly with their email security products and their other security products and their backup products. And all of which are in turn integrated, very closely with Office 365 and so on. So you're going to have sort of the ultimate dashboard for securing your end users. And instead of security being, maybe a second thought or something that is added to the platform, it's really going to be kind of a security first mindset in this product.
And then they're fine just letting go of the operational side to other products.
Right. Yep.
I see. I mean, you know what? In a space that's getting really crowded, like these all-in-one managed services suites that include PSA and RMM and security too. And it's hard to say that they're not good security solutions, but I could see how you're saying a lot of those are maybe operational first. Convenience operational for the managed services provider, but not necessarily as a robust security solution. That is a way to differentiate, and I can't think of many other ways to differentiate against packages like that. But there is a lot of convenience to the other approach, which is we're dumping everything into one solution. So you get security, you get operations, you get RMM, you get ticketing, you get blah blah blah, all of that in one shot.
And it's kind of the thing is the success of this strategy is going to depend a little bit on the extent to which MSPs really sort of foreground security as either what they do to make money or what matters most to their customers. And I mean, it's almost becoming a cliche these days. The thing that is most likely to get you fired as an MSP is if your customer gets breached. So I mean, everybody is interested in security. Because if you're not interested in security, security is interested in you. It's going to come find you and affect you in one way or another, even if you're not really trying to make it a big part of how you make money. But if for somebody,
I'm gonna make you pause right there. If it is not currently a big part of how you think you're going to make money, think again. Right? That is where a lot of money and growth is in security.
Yep. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. It's the one sort of common denominator to more or less anything else that a ChannelPro sells and an SMB uses. All of it has to be secured. So it's the demand is universal and only growing. But is security the number one thing that you do? Is it important enough to you that you will invest in an RMM platform that is exceptionally good at security, assuming that is what managed workplace is? It's an open question kind of thing. We'll have to see.
And they're really going to have to sell that too, though, Rich. I mean, to say we put security first, that doesn't necessarily mean it is better than what these other companies provide, because a lot of these other companies have been buying best of breed security companies and weaving them into their own products. So they're going to have to be very upfront about and be able to show this is why, if security is a priority for you, why you want to go with us.
If you look across the other big RMM companies, though, the only one that comes to mind immediately as having maybe a comparable story to tell would be SolarWinds, and they have made a whole range of different security related acquisitions, and I mean they have been very serious about that. But I mean, the folks at Datto told me at DattoCon just a few months ago that we're not in security right now. We don't have any imminent plans to get in. We're kind of waiting for that market to mature a little bit and help us understand exactly where we can play. ConnectWise, super interested in security, but still at a very early stage of how they do that. So right now, at least, Barracuda has a good opportunity to go out to an MSP and say, we've been doing this for a long time. And it's not just that we have email security. We have a whole range of these different products. And they all sort of work together better if their common point of connection is our RMM platform. So, I mean, they do have a case that they can make. Again, to me, it just kind of comes back to how important is that value proposition to an MSP.
Yeah, it must be important to some. It says he says the guy who gave the quotes here is growing by 30% a year. That's pretty good.
Right. Yeah. The percentage or the number of their MSP partners who are using more than one product. So you're looking at the number. I'm not right now. What is it, 4,000-ish?
4,400 MSP partners is. I can't pronounce this name because I'm going to screw it up. So I'm just not going to try.
Brian Babineau is the GM in charge of the Barracuda MSP division specifically.
Well, now that you say it, I can see how to pronounce it, but it's a little unclear.
Yep.
The first time because it's a lot of vowels.
Yep. Exactly. So he said about 4,400 partners right now, but a lot of them they inherited along with Managed Workplace. And a lot of those partners just use Managed Workplace right now, but they are growing the percentage of MSP partners using more than one Barracuda product by 30% a year. And that's one of his top metrics. He said one of the things that he looks at most closely as he runs the business.
Very cool. Anything else to talk about with Barracuda? I think that's a pretty good overview.
I agree.
So PAX 8's also in the news. And they're offering cloud workspace software from CloudJumper. So what is this about?
Well, what's interesting about this is it gives me my latest opportunity to climb on the soapbox and talk again about what I think is going to be a huge, huge story for our readers over the course of the next few years, which is the apparently quite imminent launch of Windows Virtual Desktop, the cloud-based virtual desktop infrastructure solution from Microsoft, which I suspect, I'm just guessing, I have a hunch it will officially launch at Ignite, which is their IT conference in November, I believe. But they have said essentially it's going to be, at some point before the end of the year. That would be a pretty logical place to announce the official general availability of that product.
As opposed to like the Boone County Fair, that would also be a pretty good place to announce something like that.
Well, if you're into fried butter.
Right, was there like a Seattle County Fair?
Well, Seattle, there is no Seattle County, but there is there's a state fair near here and a King County. Yeah, there are state fairs within easy driving distance of Seattle.
So I could see like CEO of Microsoft up there holding a corn dog, announcing. No, okay, yeah, Ignite makes sense.
Yeah,
and I am with you. This is a big one. This is the biggest one, and I think I probably said this on the show before, like the big one that should have happened 8 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Like as soon as Azure became like this monolithic cloud, I don't see why this wasn't the first thing that they did.
Yeah, given that we're talking about the Windows company here, it would be an interesting conversation to have with somebody over there in terms of, what were the technology limitations maybe, or, what was it that they were waiting for, perhaps technically before they felt like that it was time to do. I don't know. It would be really interesting to get their take on that. But the time has come, apparently, and I think it's safe to assume that, once the Microsoft marketing machine gets cranked up and they're going out to the people who are using Office 365 and everybody who is contemplating using it in the future and saying for X dollars incremental per month, you can get your Windows desktop as well and pay for it through subscription, monthly installments, the way you like to buy all your technology these days, and you're getting updates all the time. There are nobody has to touch a desktop to update the operating, et cetera, et cetera. The whole value proposition in terms of spinning things back up again, instantly if there's a problem and keeping the data secure, yada, yada, yada. Once Microsoft starts telling the story, I really believe that there's going to be huge demand for this. And it's going to be a big part of what Microsoft Cloud partners are selling and focusing on in the next few years. And the folks at Pax8 agree, basically. And this announcement this week is just evidence of that. They have added CloudJumper to their lineup of vendors. They're a cloud distributor, Pax8, and their line card now includes CloudJumper. CloudJumper is a big name in cloud workspaces. The cloud workspace market is really still a maturing one. But CloudJumper is a serious enough player in cloud workspaces that they've been partnering very closely with Microsoft on Windows Virtual Desktop. And so those are the guys that Pax8 decided that they wanted to have on board when they made their own kind of Windows Virtual Desktop play. So just a little bit more evidence, the evidence mounts, it accumulates that companies, in the vendor world, among the distributors, are getting a sense for how big Windows Virtual Desktop is going to be, and they are very much looking to be a part of that and positioning themselves to do that now in the run-up, the final few weeks before that product goes from public preview to generally available. So
the CloudJumper thing is interesting, and maybe I'm somewhat unfamiliar with what CloudJumper does, but I would have positioned them more as a competitor to something like Windows Virtual Desktop than something that you would use with it.
It's think of it more as almost a management plane for something like so. I mean, it's a really powerful tool for
managing virtual desktops,
deploying it and managing it and all of that. Yeah, which is why the Microsoft folks are very interested in CloudJumper these days.
Because Windows Virtual Desktop doesn't have as robust of a management solution. Is that what I'm gathering?
Yeah, and the other thing that's really interesting about CloudJumper is just that they were into Cloud Workspace before Cloud Workspace was cool, right? Like they've been doing this for years now, and so they have encountered a lot of the little things, the technical challenges that can go along with delivering this kind of a solution. They really understand this technology at a very deep level. And so the day may come soon when Microsoft has that same kind of know-how in-house But I would think for right now, part of what makes CloudJumper an interesting partner for Microsoft is just, kind of tapping into some of their knowledge about the complexities of doing this kind of thing, which every time I interview someone from CloudJumper about some product enhancement they've made, I very quickly am reminded of how little I understand, how not technical I am and how little I understand this market or this technology, and also how complex it really is, which I'm sure they would verify. It's a lot of work, basically, to figure it all out and make it look easy.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So cool. Well, I'd be very interested to hear from those listening and watching what their thoughts are on the impending release GA of Windows Virtual Desktop, and whether or not that's something that they're seriously looking at, and how they see it transforming their business. So leave us a comment if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening via audio, send us an email, podcast@channelpronetwork.com, and let us know what you think. We're very, very curious. It's a story that we think is big, and we want to know whether you think it's big and what your plans are to get behind it, or not get it behind it if you are opposed to WVD. When you say it that way, it almost sounds like a disease, WVD.
Yeah.
But if you're like so against it, tell us why. We want to hear. So that kind of wraps up the news. But we've got a couple other stories we want to talk about. One is part 3 of a story that we've been kind of rolling out over the last several months, called Profit Fuel. We talked about Profit Fuel part 2, I believe, a month or so ago. I could go back in the notes and look. But this one is part 3, Vertical Industry Solutions. So, Rich, if I want to fuel my profits, how will Vertical Industry Solutions help me do just that?
Well, so just as a reminder, this whole Profit Fuel series that we've been doing this year is really designed to help our readers seek out and find opportunities to get into profit-rich kinds of markets at a time when the hardware maintenance and kind of basic endpoint management that MSPs do and channel pros have been doing for a long time. Those services, to the extent that they aren't already commoditized or becoming more commoditized, where are the places that you can kind of go from where you are today that are going to help you maybe replace some of that margin? And we've talked about some advanced cloud solutions before. Part 2 in the series was around CRM and ERP. And so, now we're talking about vertical solutions. We quote a bunch of channel pros who have some vertical expertise in the article, and they will all tell you basically if you know more about a customer's specific industry and you can speak the language and you understand the software and so on, you are a better technology partner to them than the other guy up the road, and they will pay you for that. Companies with vertical expertise command higher margins than channel pros with generic expertise. And I'll say, similar but slightly different observation, anytime you go out and look for the fastest growing MSPs and solution providers out there, they tend to be vertically specialized. These two things go together. Growth and high profit and vertical specialization, these three things, tend to be associated with one another. So that is the upside. That's the good side, basically. If you have vertical expertise, it's really going to help you improve margins and grow your business. The downside, which we cover fully in this article as well, is just that it's not necessarily cheap to get there. It's not an overnight process, and it's not inexpensive to really become a vertical specialist. Getting started is not that hard because a lot of our readers rely on referrals for business. And so you do a bang-up job for a medical practice, you'll probably get recommended to other medical practices, and pretty soon a large chunk of your business is coming from the healthcare industry. Over time, you will just sort of naturally start to become familiar with the healthcare industry and begin kind of organically developing some healthcare expertise. But to really kind of go beyond that to the next level, to understand the line of business solutions and have people on staff who know how to provide some basic level support for that. maybe do some customization, to understand the regulations, like especially if you're in healthcare, but other industries as well, retail, financial services, to understand the regulations, really be able to help your customers navigate that. It just takes some time to accumulate that knowledge. And the people who have done it, who we quote in the article, say it was not an inexpensive process, but not insurmountable either. And we talk about the three S's, the three S's that you tend to find in high growth managed services businesses, and standardization of process and tool set is one, and building scalable processes that can grow alongside you. That's another one, and specialization, as in vertical specialization, for example, is definitely one of those things that's really going to set you apart. And it's not cheap, doesn't happen overnight, but it's definitely something to be thinking about seriously.
So what would you say, how specialized would you want to go in something like this? So we always talk about vertical specialization, and it's very easy to draw some of the obvious lines around, like, well, healthcare, education, industrial, retail, but it really is going deeper than just that, right? But how deep do you go?
In terms of market segment?
In terms of being specialized, right? So do you want to say, well, if I was, is it going to be more profitable if I just focus on, let's say in the healthcare industry, X-ray and imaging doctors, right? Or do you just go like, I'm purely dental? Am I in the retail category? Am I large box home good? Like, is it really just kind of like that top level verticalization only, right? Like, so if I say I'm healthcare oriented, I can do anything in healthcare, or is that not as profitable?
So, so the answer to that question is going to depend a little bit on where you are located. So, from a highest level perspective, and I will say right up front, what I'm thinking of here immediately is conversations I've had with Jay McBain, who we both know, and he's a Forrester analyst now. He's been in the channel for a long time and in other roles at other companies, and he really believes that the more specialized you get, not just in terms of vertical industry, but company size, geographic location, and any kind of variable that you can name, the more specialized you get, the higher your margins are going to be, basically. But the trick, of course, is your geographic reach. So if you're in a market, if you're in a larger city, if you're doing business in Seattle, say, it would probably be really smart to decide, I'm not going after healthcare, I'm going after the medical imaging guys in healthcare. Because that's even narrower specialization, even bigger differentiation, and probably higher profits for me. It might be a little bit harder to do that if you're, in more of a rural kind of location. It might make more sense to be a bit more generalized there. So it'll shift around a little bit, but again, broadly speaking, more specialization tends to be good.
So you want to say, I like medical X-ray and imaging with firms with less than 10 endpoints, ran by a guy who likes scrambled eggs or Dutch babies, right? Breakfast specialization, Rich.
Yeah. No, if you own the scrambled egg market,
that'd be a big market. The scrambled egg market. Imagine how many scrambled eggs are made every day.
I wonder.
We need to look this up. I'm very curious. No, I agree. I think you're absolutely correct that you really have to look at where you are located and how far you can reach out. Because I do feel like you could specialize to the point where you have a customer of one, right? And then that is the only customer you could possibly have. But I don't think you want to go so broad in a large area where you can't learn the vernacular and you can't specialize to that degree, right? Because there's even in the healthcare industry, there's a lot of differences between dental and internal medicine versus therapy versus what other things are in medicine, cosmetic surgery, or something like that, right? So I think you should dive down instead of saying just education, right? There's the obvious splits. There's K-8 and there's university, but I bet there's other specializations in there too. Private versus public versus small versus large. Like how would you what other kind of to help partners out? What other kind of segments would you say they could look at to be a little more specialized in even one of the larger, broader markets?
Well, so in education, I mean, you might be focused more on networking. You might be focused on emergency management, like campus safety kinds of systems, learning management systems, collaboration. So, you could, because there's demand for all of that right now in the education space, but you could decide that you're really going to plant your flag in one of those areas and make that your
right. So you're also saying vertical specialization can be by your offering, not just your customer, right? So you could specialize in learning management solutions for education, as opposed to just I do everything for education.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay, that's a different way of thinking. A lot of people may not think that way. So,
yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting. You focus on delivering eggs as opposed to biscuits and gravy.
As opposed to what?
As opposed to biscuits and gravy.
Yeah.
I like it. Very cool. Well, there's a lot to digest in this Profit Fuel series. Is there any particular thing you want to kind of highlight here, or do you want to just kind of send folks off to read the rest?
Yeah, no, I would say go check it out. We've covered a lot of the highlights here just in what we've said already, but there is more to be enjoyed there. So we'll have a link to that in the show notes. Yeah,
excellent. And so definitely check out this series. Yeah, so if you're listening via audio, just go to channelpronetwork.com, find the show notes for this page. They're usually easy to find. Just go to the download section, find the show, and you'll be able to go and find links to all of the stories and articles and news things that we're talking about. If you're watching on like YouTube, go to the description area, open that up, and then we put the links and all that stuff right in there for you, so you can listen and follow along kind of as we go and read through this stuff. But lots of great info, very interesting. Now we're going to talk about feet, which is I know a very important thing for you, Rich. You are a foot man, from what I understand.
Wow.
Well, we were talking about Dutch babies earlier. I figured.
Yeah, exactly. And then somehow VD came up, and next thing you know, just weird.
Oh God, I gotta stop laughing. We're not talking about just feet. We were talking about getting your foot in the door.
Yeah.
Via assessments.
Yeah.
How did I get that one all wrong, Rich?
It's all my fault. It's the $147.
Is that how much you get for touching somebody's feet these days? Okay, I better stop before we get they throw the naughty filter on us on YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we're doing assessments, what this is saying is that there's assessments are not more than just a way to get your foot in the door, but it's something else. What is the something else?
Well, the idea is it can be a business itself, or a part of your business itself. So we went out and spoke to some people who were really sort of best in class at network assessments. Most channel pros to some degree or another will go into a new client site or a prospective client site and do an assessment, and there are tools like Network Detective we were talking about earlier in the show that can help you with that. So the idea of doing assessments at all isn't necessarily a new thing, but there are lots and lots of people out there who do it for free because it's a foot in the door, and this is how I get a customer interested in me. Sometimes there are people out there who will charge for it, but then if a prospective customer signs a contract with them, they'll kind of credit whatever the customer paid towards their first payment or something like that. There are really three sort of best practices for providing assessments that we cover in this article. But the most important of them basically is you should be charging for this, and you shouldn't be giving the money back even if the customer signs with you. This is a a valuable service that you're providing them. And just like any other valuable service that you provide to your customers, you deserve to be paid for it. And it just sets the right tone with the customer in terms of the value of your expertise and how you're going to be working with them going forward. That you are going to do something for them that is very helpful for them and that they will benefit from, and you will be compensated for that and the skill with which you do it. And so, assessments in that case become, per the headline, more than just a foot in the door. It's more than just a way to bring in a new customer. It's also a source of revenue and a form of branding, essentially, for your business as well.
Yeah, one of the things that they were talking about at our show in San Jose a few weeks ago that kind of caught my ear is that as assessments being a service that you offer, because there are a lot of regulations for various industries that require ongoing assessment, and that can be a very profitable thing to do. And I think that's kind of what this is starting to talk about a little bit, about making assessment a much more important part of your business and making it something you can charge for.
Yeah, exactly. That's exact. And in fact, like I said, there are sort of 3 best practices in the article. One of them is assessment should not be a one and done kind of thing. If you're using an assessment as a foot in the door, you probably go in, you assess the environment, you say, here's what you're doing wrong or what your incumbent IT provider hasn't done properly for you, and we're going to fix that and move forward. But you should be continually reassessing environments for any number of reasons. So yeah, assessments can be a source of recurring revenue as well as one-time revenue. And then the sort of third best practice in the article is in terms of how you conduct the process and the information that you're collecting. It is a technical process. You're looking around at port settings and all sorts of stuff like that. But in terms of how you convey the results of an assessment to a customer, it should not be a technical conversation. It should be a business conversation. The companies that sort of get the most mileage out of the assessments that they provide are the ones who can sit down with a business owner and translate that technical information into a business dialogue about making your business safer and faster and more productive and efficient and so on. So you really kind of need to teach yourself how to translate technical data into business value talking points.
And why stop there? I mean, I think assessments could take a much more holistic view of the company, right? You could start assessing everything, right? You could assess not only their security footprint, compliance with certain regulations. You could start assessing their hardware. You could start assessing their physical security. You could start assessing their diet and exercise. And come up with a plan to improve the health of everyone there.
Their wardrobe,
fashion assessment, right? Cultural assessment, musical assessment. Bring in the flutophones and make everybody play and see what their musical assessments are. What are the things that could an MSP assess in a business?
Beyond
diet and exercise.
Oh, well, I think we've covered a lot of the good ones. Maybe the snack options,
vending machine assessment. Yep.
Yeah.
Coffee assessment.
Right.
Marital assessment for anybody who's in relationships. You got to start assessing their.
Yeah.
Okay, so for those people who are new to ChannelPro Weekly, we like to have fun. We're not actually serious about any of those, except for the ones about security and compliance with regulations that a lot of companies may not even know about, right?
Yeah.
And because I found that very interesting too. So if folks, if you ever get the chance to come to one of our live events, do it. You will learn so much stuff about all of these different ways to grow your practice. And the compliance and regulation market is very interesting. And what we were talking about was that there are companies that don't even realize that they need to be compliant with certain regulations. So they're not, but they should be, because they might be like holding data for a company through a service, and then that would mean that that company who's holding data, even if temporarily, or transferring data through it, would also have to be compliant with regulation, and that there's regulations that they may not even know exist that you have to tell them about. So like, it's assessments is a big way to do that, and a good way to capture the attention of customers.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say about businesses out there being subject to regulations they don't even know about, because it came up in a conversation, an interview I did with a Kaseya executive at the IT Glue show earlier this week. There's a whole story. We didn't really get a chance to cover it as well as I would have liked at ChannelPro last week because of other things going on. But Kaseya sort of set up a compliance unit and invested millions of dollars specifically in compliance as an area that they're going to focus on. And so I was talking about that a little bit with them at the show earlier this week, and they said, one of the issues that they run into is you talk to MSPs about compliance, and they say, well, I don't have customers in healthcare or retail. It's really not that relevant for my customer base. And there's an education process to kind of help them understand, well, do you support accountants? Say, well, yeah, I've got a bunch of accountants. Well, if those accountants are working with healthcare organizations, they have regulatory, healthcare specific regulatory obligations, and you need to understand what those are and help them comply with those. The reach of some of these regulations is broader than might seem intuitive. And I think there are a lot of companies out there that don't fully appreciate that.
Agreed. Yeah, very, very interesting stuff. So go and check this out and read a little bit more about assessments. There's a longer piece, but there's a lot of really good insight here that will help you kind of wrap your head around assessments as a more significant part of your business to help you get more customers and get more traction. Would you say that's fair?
I would say that's an excellent assessment of that article.
But that's why they leave the puns to me, Rich.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's what happens when Captain Serious makes a funny.
Oh no, you've had lots of good ones. So great. Well, that kind of wraps up some of our stories. I do have a museum pick today, and I hope it's not one we've talked about. I know we've talked in the past about some various legacy interfaces, and one in particular that I know we discussed was the serial port, which oddly enough is still widely in use today, in not necessarily in the office setting or in the consumer setting or in modern day computing, much more in the industrial control side of things, machining and things like that. But it's worth taking a dive down history lane and talking about another once incredibly popular interface that has almost been entirely completely supplanted. Very, very little use of this today, but that is this guy right here. So for those listening, I am holding up a card, which is an add-on card, but this is the DB25 parallel interface, commonly known as the Centronics interface. But it was essentially an interface designed around parallel communication, supplanted itself in history primarily as the de facto standard for printers, for the connection between host machines and printers, which made parallel made much more sense in terms of how data was transmitted to printers, and it was much easier. I don't want to get too nerdy, but it was the communication method made much more sense for the communication of character to printer, so this was used a lot. Now it also found itself a home in other types of devices and communication as a communication interface for certain other things where it made sense. Early CD or like external CD drives, early like the zip drive, for example, was early data storage devices that were like external. It was very commonly used there. I'm trying to think what other. Rich, you I'm sure used this interface on various things.
I must have.
Most likely for a printer a long time ago. But can you think of some other things that this would have been used on? There was some early video capture devices. Actually, it was an very early networking, pre LAN RJ45, but it was there were some adapters that would hook this up to like a cable, like a coaxial cable for early coaxial networking. Would often interface with adapters via parallel. Not so much in host machines. Host machines usually go into the bus, but if you had like a device, like a hardware device, a machine or something like that sitting out somewhere, and you wanted to access it via networking, but it only had parallel interfaces, you could do this. But you remember this, right? Actually, I got another thing. If you're watching, I went down. Sorry to get off camera there. I went down into the pit of despair, also known as the graveyard, and I managed to drum up a cable. So this one is a kind of the DB25 on one end, but that kind of Centronics 36-pin edge connector. You remember that? Remember that one, Rich? It was another connection type.
That one's less familiar to me, actually.
It's still parallel, believe it or not. The early devices tended to use this, although not all of these are actually pinned out with anything. When IBM came out with the IBM PC, they really popularized the DB25 as kind of the standard parallel connection. But a lot of the early stuff used this kind of Centronics. It's what it's called. They often refer to as the Centronics connector. But it's like a 36-pin, 37-pin kind of edge connector. But pretty cool stuff. It could the Centronics parallel port could transfer data as rapidly as 75,000 characters per second in the early days, which was far faster than the average printer could print. Because remember, printers back in the day were dot matrix.
Mm-hmm.
So they could only do, maybe if it was lucky, 160 characters a second. So it was certainly fast enough for that. Modified by IBM to do 8-bit data bidirectionality. The DB25 kind of became the standard connector. They increased the speed that got standardized to the IEEE 1284 standard in 1994 with the EPP and ECP protocols that would allow for backwards compatibility. That also made it faster. ECP offers a performance of up to 2.5 megabytes per second in both directions. So parallel connection, and that's why this ended up being used primarily for CD and other things that with high data transfer, because it was faster than serial, and it was a much it could transmit more data than serial could at the time. But then something happened, Rich. You know what happened?
USB
came along and essentially completely obliterated the need for parallel for this kind of parallel interface that was out there. Some of the last things that were used with parallel included printers, but also zip drives, CD writers. It was also used for scanners, modems, gamepads, and joysticks, early MP3 players, and then USB came along and completely obliterated the need for parallel to the point where it is practically not necessary today. And I'm trying to think of anything outside of industrial applications with legacy devices and hobbyists. Is that, from what I understand, the parallel interface is a much easier interface to a board. It requires less overhead, so it might be used in hobbyist development kind of stuff, but it's not. I don't even think there's much of that going on. What do you think, Rich? Do you have any parallel cables at home?
Well, I might actually. I'm wondering actually as we talk about this because I've got this box in the closet behind me there that is filled with all sorts of stuff that some of which is really. I guess the closest thing to my museum is just stuff I've accumulated and not thrown away. I would not be surprised if there's a parallel cable back there down at the bottom somewhere, but I don't know. I honestly can't remember the last time I saw a parallel connection in the wild. I don't know, but it's been a while.
Yeah, and this is an older one. I mean, really, USB really did, in a very short order, practically eliminate the need for parallel. You still saw it on machines for quite a while because a lot of printers, it was still the de facto standard for printers up until that time. And for a little while after, and printers have a much longer shelf life in a lot of cases than computing devices. So parallel stuck around on host machines as a kind of a legacy interconnect for primarily for print devices that were pre-existing, but everything went USB really quickly and wasn't really necessary anymore. But I'm sure there are those out there who have a very fond memory of the parallel cable, that giant wide interface. So as an interesting thing, I'll put it out to our listeners and watchers. As you work with clients and customers, are there any that you have that still widely use a parallel interface for anything? And I have a feeling we're probably going to hear a lot from like industrial people who have like custom machines and stuff. But if you're using those, I'd like to hear about those. But if you still have clients that are using like a parallel printer, I would like to hear that too. Like, how much do you, in your working with customers, do you run into something that's still riding parallel, and what is it? podcast@channelpronetwork.com is the email address, or drop a comment in the video chat on YouTube if you're there, and let us know where you see it and how often you see it. So that's my museum pick. Rich, you want to talk about parallel interfacing anymore?
It might play into your tech pick.
It might. In fact, it does. So I'm taking the easy way out on the tech pick this week and playing a that was then, this is now, and saying, well, if you did run into a parallel device and you needed it to function still, how would you do it? And the easy way is there are USB to DB25 adapters. So right now, really, they just actually look like a cable. It's a USB cable on one end and the DB25 parallel connection on the other. But there is a microchip in there somewhere at one end of that cable that is kind of doing some protocol language, communication kind of adaptation. So in order to make that function properly. Those do exist. I mean, you can go to Amazon Newegg and you can do a search and you'll find various kinds of adapters. You can also still find host PC cards if you needed to like install a card in a machine, you could do that. But since there's so many like laptops and mobile devices, and it's not easy to always put PCI in, I just picked a straight USB to DB25 adapter. I love the StarTech.com company and website because I could spend hours just browsing all the weird stuff that they make and weird adapters and thinking like, if I ever need to adapt, Centronics blah 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 to a SCSI array, which I would never probably need to do, but if I did, they probably make an adapter to do it. So I picked one from them because I know it's good stuff and it'll work. It is the 6-foot USB to DB25 adapter. Theirs is about like 15-ish bucks. They also make various other options. They do make a USB-C to parallel, which, so it's like I say, they're still modern demand because USB-C is quite new. So they make that, and they also make a USB to parallel with the card edge kind of connector too. So a lot of variety. So if you have a device out there that you need to interface and it runs parallel for some reason, these are all of the different cables that could make that happen. You're going to go out and buy 6 of them just to hang in your room or to do something. What are you going to do with them, Rich?
Well, if it's not me, somebody's going to do it. As it happens, just randomly, I got an email from StarTech's PR person this morning, and I guess this is specific to Canada, but in Canada, they have had 181% revenue growth over the last 5 years. So yeah, there are a lot of people out there who like the kind of stuff that Star Trek offers.
I like Star Trek too, Rich. Now don't get me started on that, because we could have a Star Trek pick every week where we talk about Spock or a particular moment in an episode. Of all the series, Rich, that's a gold mine that we could talk about.
The Star Trek pick of the week.
Star Trek pick of the week. Folks, if you want to see a Star Trek pick of the week, really, let us know. Podcast at ChannelPro.network.com, and we will do Star Trek. I know them all. I've probably seen them all. Rich, are you a big Trekkie?
The very original series, I'm sure I've seen every episode many times. But as you get closer to the present day, it's less likely that I've been indulging.
Yeah, I kind of stopped at Enterprise with Scott Bakula. I watched that one through. I've seen them all. The original, Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise, and all the movies. The new one, the one that's kind of locked to a streaming service on CBS, I haven't seen yet because I'm not going to give CBS $10 a month to watch it. So I haven't seen that one yet, but we could catch you up on Star Trek, Rich. There's lots of good Star Trek to watch.
Okay. Yeah. I've seen all the movies.
I'll have to start sending you episodes. We should start. Yeah. Have you seen the Next Gen? We should probably start you there. Good old Captain Picard.
Yeah, no, that one I have not seen every episode, every season, but I've seen a lot of that one. I liked that series. Blasphemy,
Rich. And hey, folks out there, it is okay to like Star Trek. Okay, there's like this stigma attached to it. Like Star Trek is fine. You can like Trek now because everybody thinks Trekkies and like you're going to conventions and you're dressing up as Vulcans or Romulans or whatever. Like there is that level of Trekkie, right? And that level of Trekkie has gotten so much hype and so much attention that it's like made regular people who just liked the show and thought that it was, entertaining and had good storylines and, was very creative. Like me, like I'm not going to conventions dressing up as a Klingon. Okay. I'm not. But it's okay to like Star Trek, even if you don't like it to that extent. Just putting that out there for people.
As generally, from the like I said, the shows that I've seen, well written, well performed. I mean, these are high quality television programs.
I would concur. High quality, just like StarTech.com's USB to parallel adapters. So that's my tech pick this week. If you're working with anything like that, and like I said, I'd love to hear if anybody is still interfacing with parallel devices in the wild, and what they are and what they do and how you deal with them. So that's it for me. So Rich, if you were going to gaze into a crystal ball and look backwards and talk about things that were not Star Trek related, what would you see, and what do we have coming up next week in the weeks to come?
Well, if I was looking back at some stuff that happened this week and looking for a good summary of that, I would go to the In Case You Missed It post that our colleague James Gaskin creates for us every week. That goes up on ChannelProNetwork.com every Friday. He is going to pick out for you some of the most SMB relevant news from the Oracle World Conference that took place this year. Unbelievable torrents of news from Oracle, but not a lot of it is necessarily going to be relevant to the folks who read ChannelPro. But James has found the stuff that is for you. He will have some information as well about this cool new laptop that HP came out with yesterday called the Dragonfly. Very light, thin. He's got some news for you about Microsoft extending some extra support to users of Exchange Server 2010. And then he will also have some thoughts for you about a story concerning some IoT sensors going in the one place on an airliner that you least want them to be. You can guess what that's about. Now, looking ahead to next week, not a huge.
Wait. Where? IoT sensors in the what? In the lavatory?
Well, there you go. What is the one place in the airplane you don't want IoT sensors? And Airbus is trying it out right now.
I have got to go read about that. Okay, sorry. Okay, go ahead.
So yeah, there's that. And now if we're looking ahead to next week, Spiceworks is holding its annual Spice World conference in Austin. Very popular with IT professionals, including a lot of ChannelPro types. And the ASCII group is having its latest event in Newark, New Jersey.
Absolutely. And speaking of Newark, New Jersey, ChannelPro will actually be in Newark, New Jersey in early November
6th, I believe.
6th. I will find out, and I will say as soon as my screen comes up, November 6th, 2019, at the hotel, the Doubletree by Hilton Newark Airport Hotel on Frontage Road in Newark, New Jersey. I could give you the phone number now because it's on my screen, but I won't. You can just go to events.channelpronetwork.com and learn about that show there. So if you are in the New York area or anywhere in New Jersey, anywhere in that area, make it a priority to get to that show. It's the last show in 2019. So last chance to catch our 2019 content package, which is just it's a great show. We've been getting lots of high marks, lots of great reviews on that, lots of great stuff to learn, and come out and see us. Rich, give people the 1 minute spiel on Channel Pro SMB Forum.
Well, you're going to get all sorts of phenomenal information, both from your peers in the MSP world and the solution provider world, and from some of the industry's top consultants. And we're going to be talking with you about offering everything as a service, more managed services in more areas than you're probably offering today. We're going to have some folks for you sharing real-world tips in terms of turning cybersecurity into a specialization for your business. We've got some folks who are doing that very successfully today. We have got sales advice. Everybody out there is looking for good, solid sales and marketing advice. We've got some great experts on that, competing with each other on stage to provide the best piece of advice. And, of course, we have got your own Tech Trends game show, Matt.
And loads of fun, that is. Very informative. Lots of fun. I just said that twice, but it is a lot of fun. We like to, as people who watch this show today know that we like to goof around and have a good time, but also provide great insight and information. And that use not just what my session's about, but actually we inject humor and some stuff to make the day be fun and interesting while you learn a lot of great information about how to improve your business, improve your practice, make more money, all kinds of things like that. So events.channelpronetwork.com is the website. Go to that page for we call it New York Metro because we're just trying to say like it's in like the New York metropolitan area, but it's in Newark, New Jersey, which is just right outside. It's part of the New York metropolitan area. Definitely go there. There's a button to register. Make sure you do reserve your seat in advance. I think it's like $99 to reserve your seat. The event is free. There's a little fee to reserve the seat, but if you show up, that gets refunded to you. So, but just to make sure that we're preparing a lot of stuff for you, and you're gonna be there. So again, it's just to reserve the seat. You get it back, and you get a ton of value out of it beyond that. So, very good show to do. I hope to see you in Newark. And if you are a ChannelPro Weekly listener, subscriber, let us know while you're there. Rich and I will be there. Come talk to us. We'll always love meeting a listener and getting to know you and talking ChannelPro Weekly and all kinds of stuff. Good times. I
met a podcast watcher at our San Jose event just a few weeks ago.
Really? I see. I haven't met anybody who watches on YouTube yet, so that's cool. But we just recently started putting video versions of the podcast out, so it's not surprising that we have a lot more audio listeners than video watchers. So we met someone who actually watches the show.
Yeah. No, he kind of came up to me at the cocktail reception and recognized me, and not the voice but the face, and it was because he had seen me on video, and he referenced the episode we did recently with Dave Seibert, and yeah, so.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, you know what? It's true. We haven't had a lot of guests on lately, and I think we'll probably get back to having more guests on the show in the near future as we have to kind of lock in, because of the way we started doing the video podcast. Like Google took the Hangouts on Air feature away, so we were we had a rhythm down to start getting people in and doing shows with them, and then they kind of took it away. So now we're trying to figure all that stuff out and figure out a good way that's easy for guests to come on and join. And that was one of the nice parts about that feature, is that it was really easy to bring the guests in and have it all work. But we'll get back to that. Rich, I know we're talking about some guests coming up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, after we finished recording this podcast, I would like to chat with you about that a little bit, because I've got some great guests lined up, and just want to kind of figure out some logistics about that.
Oh, awesome. So Rich and I are going to go and talk about that. And you can go about your daily life. I hope you've enjoyed listening and or watching to ChannelPro Weekly today. If you'd like to subscribe, that really is the best way to do it. We're on iTunes, we're on Google Play, we're on Stitcher, we're on pretty much anywhere where podcasts can be aggregated. So go to whatever your favorite service is, subscribe to us there. If you could, leave us a good rating, a nice star rating, and or maybe a nice comment, given the thumbs up for others who might be looking for a show like ours. If you're on YouTube, you can subscribe on YouTube. There's that big button that says subscribe. You got it. You hit that, but there's, if you want to get notified of new episodes, you have to hit like a bell. So the subscribe, I'm not really sure what that does anymore, but if you subscribe, you hit the bell after that. So it's 2 clicks, 1, 2. Then as we put new episodes out, you will be notified of that on YouTube, and you'll be like, hey, they have a new episode, and you can go and you can watch. Get involved in the comments. We do want to start broadcasting live again. We will, as we get all this stuff sorted out and figure out a way to do that is manageable by me and Rich just kind of doing this, because we don't have like a separate producer guy that's over here driving stuff. If we had that, it would be a little bit easier, but we don't. So we're just trying to make something that we can do ourselves, or we have to find somebody who can do all of the slides and switches and cameras and all that kind of stuff. But we'll get there. But so you can't engage us live right now. You will be eventually, but if you go to the comments there on YouTube, answer some of the questions we have out there, start a discussion. I'd love to see all y'all out there talking to each other and helping each other and throwing your insights into these discussion threads and learning with us as we go. So if you want to email us, it's podcast@channelpronetwork.com. We're on the social networks. We're ChannelPro Network on Facebook. We are at ChannelPro SMB on Twitter. If you want to follow Rich, he is
at Rich Free.
At Rich Free, he is. That doesn't mean he's cheap. It just means that's what his handle is. Just so you know, don't get that confused. And if you want to follow me, I'm at Matt Whitlock on Twitter. And if you want to find us, we're on LinkedIn. We don't do a lot on LinkedIn yet, but we want to. I think we're ChannelPro Network on LinkedIn. You should be able to find us there. Find us there and connect with us, and we're going to see some more LinkedIn stuff coming down the road here. But other than that, that wraps up episode 117. Thank you very much for listening and watching. We will see you all next week.